Mother of all professions recognizes that to right the wrongs inflicted by years of apartheid, education, literacy and skills of South Africa requires the collective contribution of all individuals. Sharanjeet is one of those individuals.
Sharanjeet Shan is a remarkable woman.
Is a very exceptional person.
If Albert Einstein and Mahatma Gandhi, if they were alive and one person, Sharanjeet Shan would be their ideal partner.
Very intelligent woman.
A social entrepreneur and an educational activist.
Very passionate.
One of the bravest women I know.
The most extraordinary person I've met in my entire life.
Sharanjeet is the National Executive Director of the Maths Center for Professional Teachers, an organization aiming to increase teacher qualifications and professionalism as well as learners in mathematics, science, technology and entrepreneurship education. It has produced leading teaching materials for learners in grades 1 to 12 and operates in all 9 provinces.
Sharanjeet Shan is a very exceptional person. She lives, sleeps and breathes mathematics. Perhaps that's why she's the correct person for this work.
A strong leader, very set on her ideal, which is a good one. A determined leader, determined to reach as many children, as many learners as possible, and incredibly strong.
Ke motho eleng gore o emela education for bana ba rona, bana ba batho ba bantsi ba ba senang access to dilo tse ngata, and she's not shy to fight for those rights for our kids to have access to better education, better resources.
She's quite a brilliant teacher. At one of the trainings that they do with our trainers, I sat and she was demonstrating in terms of lessons. I think it was great for how she presented it. I even said after the training, if I was in grade 4, I would love mathematics like nobody's business.
Try and bring from the back of your mind problem-solving processes. How do you enter a problem? How do you attack it? And then how do you solve it?
She was called to South Africa because they needed someone that had an educational background, particularly maths, in disadvantaged communities.
She was initially called in 1994, where she attended a conference for AMISA, where she was one of the keynote speakers.
When she talks, people listens. Somebody must have heard her in one of the conferences where she appeared and then decided she would be the ideal person to come and lead Math Center as the director.
So she also been exposed to changes of curriculum and how to handle those changes within the curriculum itself, the people and everything. So she was quite an ideal person to come and use that experience to the advantage of South Africans.
In finding a way of implementing a program that will really support government's intervention in terms of education and specifically mathematics education. Yeah.
She was recognized as someone who knew a lot in terms of the maths and science field. Math Center was a very small organization at that stage. And the Math Center Board of Trustees then, having seen her at the conference, approached her to come and work in South Africa and to head the Math Center.
I did not believe that someone who is essentially a British Indian and has spent her life in England learning and working and growing and developing should be coming to Africa, South Africa, and tell teachers what to do, what not to do.
When Sharanjeet took over, Math Center started operating at a much higher level than before.
She moved us from 1995 from working in one province, I think it was 4 schools, to where we currently are today. We are working in all 9 provinces.
The training is good. We are gaining a lot. The knowledge that I've gained here has taken me to a higher level of understanding the nature of science and the nature of maths.
The reason why we are here as educators at the Maths Center is to be staff developed. In teaching, there are some areas that we as educators were failing to make good production.
I was in school a long time ago. Now I've forgotten some of the things. And there are new things that have actually come into play, like the nuclear technology. When I was at school, there wasn't anything like that.
So we are here at least to update ourselves in the knowledge that we can go and impact into the pupils, the learners out there.
In reaching people through mathematics, she's not doing it only because of her aptitude for and her love of mathematics. She's doing it to free people. She's doing it to educate people, to free them from troubling pasts and to give them choices for a better future.
Because of her fearlessness, her fearless determination too, and her belief in what our children, bana ba rona, are capable of. She sees potential. For her, that is the next scientist. And that's where she starts.
She's a teacher that takes no nonsense. I think if I had studied under Sharanjeet, I would have probably excelled in maths. I wouldn't have had a choice.
That drive, it's colleagues would say she's almost insane when it comes to children. I'm sure some of them have said that to you. It's not easy for me to see children suffer. I cannot forget and move on.
Her upbringing wasn't all that rosy. Although she was an excellent scholar, she had her own share of trouble, in the eyes of her father that is. Despite all her obstacles, she managed to rise above all of that.
Along came destiny. I fell in love, and according to a very traditional father, those are not things a daughter does. So it was a head-on clash between a daughter who was an extreme rebel, quite good at school and learning, and a father who had his own design for his daughter.
I know she was born in India. She was a gifted child. She did very well academically, studied medicine there, fell in love with a boy who was of a different religion. You know, the families couldn't reconcile themselves to the fact, and they locked her up and were really cruel.
And yet here was a tradition that was saying a Sikh girl cannot marry a Muslim. And that was total violation of his authority and his traditions. So he imprisoned me for 8 months. And in the end, when he could not get me to see his ways, he found the first man who would essentially buy me. And he was living in England. I followed him. That's what one did in those days. And within a year or so, I was also pregnant with my first son. So life completely turned upside down, and I decided the second best thing, as I love children and I love the challenges they pose, I love interactions with them, I'd become a teacher.
Most important thing is no matter what's happened to her or what obstacles there've been, she's found a way to rise above that, but not selfishly. She's been able to give back into communities wherever she's lived.
When she came to South Africa with her second husband, she stayed on to assist the center in taking care of the welfare of the African child and empowering them through education. Sharanjeet's commitment led her to stay on a more permanent basis and invest deeper in the Maths Center.
I had just been married about 5 years prior to coming to South Africa for the second time. He was an excellent human being, a medical doctor who had his own ambitions. and we had come together to South Africa. He started working at George Masebe Hospital in Limpopo as a medical doctor. This was not what he had wanted to do with his life. In his words, I was possessed with the welfare of black African children.
My mum doesn't have patience for people who are not willing to pull their weight. I'm not saying that he wasn't pulling his weight or I wasn't, but she is more focused on empowering children and educating children, especially in mathematics and science. So her personal life would take a second best. She's very cause-orientated. So in terms of easy to relocate, at the time I was a bit out of control because I was a teenager. I was on the streets and going out of control. And she was at the part of her life where she wanted to do something to empower. So for her to properly assist people to grow, not a second thought. She went on the plane and left me behind.
It was a very difficult journey. In a sense, making the decision to leave my sons behind, one of whom was already 26, the other one was just 18 years old and entering his A-levels to study law. That was a difficult decision.
She had made up her mind, so I would either have to take control of my life on the streets at the time and wise up and start studying in value education.
But for a mother to part from her sons when you're a single parent and go 6,000 kilometers away, it was not such an easy decision. Coupled with the fact that I truly was not convinced that I could have contributed anything truly life-changing or dynamic to the system in South Africa.
Sharanjeet had become an extraordinarily driven woman committed to delivering a better education to the children of South Africa. She is also big on progression programs, urging her facilitators to take a maths and science test on higher grade. All of this was not well received, but she managed to stay on.
In the beginning, I wanted to instigate teacher progression and learner progression programs, and I met with huge resistance. My own facilitators were not used to being directed and being guided and being supported in that way. And I wanted everybody to sit a test. Then I would say, let's do an impact study. Are more children passing? Are more children engaging with mathematics, reading and writing and talk and drawings and model making, communication, representation within mathematics? Are children comfortable with it? Can they talk mathematics? So we devised a study and they objected to that. And a petition was taken against me because I was forcing my facilitators to give me an impact study and learn further themselves.